Assalamu alaikum. I'm gonna jump on here. I know I've been kind of out of the loop for a while, just been busy with some stuff. But some people had been jumping in my DMs asking me to tell the story about how I became a Muslim. And because I only got 10-minute videos on here, this is going to be a very cursory explanation of that. It might take a couple videos to do it even then. But they've been asking me for a while, so I decided to just jump on here and, because I became Muslim in prison. And so everybody's kind of curious to know how that went. So, Bismillah. Just to give a little brief backstory about me, I always believed in God, period. Even from a young person, like the main belief was probably Christianity. Not really a denomination, but just believing, in God. And so I always believed that there was a God. I always believed you should do right. Even when I was messing up, right? Even, when I was on the street. But even as a kid, I used to always ask questions to people about like paradise and hell. So I always had this deep desire to learn about eschatological things. And now that I'm a grown man, I assume that had something to do with, because there's a deep yearning to return back to where you came from. Even if we don't really understand it consciously. And so I ended up going to prison, and I knew a couple people who were Muslim in there, but nothing really took root at this point. But, me and my adventurous nature, it always left doors open for me. Like no matter what I believed, no matter what I held on to, I always had this thing where maybe not, right? And so it allowed me to keep the doors of my options open. And I think that might be in part, or probably most in part, at least from the realm of the created, the sabab, why that took place. So when I met these Muslim gentlemen, when I was in prison, I used to always hear them talk over the tier, right? Out of the bars, about just Islam and everything, right? Islam in business, Islam in law, Islamic history, symbolism, spirituality. And this is where I came into contact with this type of Islamic symbolism, like when you're in salat and you're in sujood and the heart being elevated over the mind because your head is down and then your heart is up because it's in your chest, so it's elevated above your head, which is on the ground. And all these symbolic things, I've always really been kind of deep into that because I know that symbolism is just a manifestation in this realm of a greater truth, right? Of a greater reality. And so I always kind of took to that because I felt like that's the language to understand the ghaib, right? Or the unseen, I'll say. Which years later, kind of reaffirmed itself in some of the texts that I was reading. And then, of course, I had a very imaginative childhood. Well, even now, actually. My imagination tends to run wild. So, So when I heard that this, religion is an ocean with no shores, I remember someone, when I was locked up, had that book by Ibn al-Arabi, and about the imagination. It really just kind of sparked my curiosity with that. And, but I never became Muslim yet. I was always just kind of interested. And so one of the things that I would always do is go to the library. I'd put a pass in to go to the library. And I used to study everything because I was bored in there. I didn't really have nothing to do. I was always into knowledge. Even when I was a kid too. Like I remember being like 4 and 5 years old, 6, and I'd wake up like at 2 in the morning, turn my light on, and get my little Sesame Street books. I'd get my little Sesame Street books and read them. I used to love reading at night even when I was a young kid. But I used to go to the library and I used to get books on everything. I used to get books on Hinduism and, Buddhism and even Wiccan and philosophy and Christianity and Judaism and all this stuff. But nothing did it. Like, it was just like, and I think Allah had a plan here, because one of the things that I noticed was I even started, reading books on medicine and poison and, just filling my head with like just stuff. And the way it planned out was that this prison library was so outdated because no one donated new books to it. So all the books were just old and they weren't worth reading. And then, so, reluctantly at this time, I never really considered Islam like legit. And so I kind of got funneled into this thing because, the Quran is, Ajila Musamma, like this is the time of the Quran. Like all the other dispensations are over now. They had their time and this is the time for that. And I think that, one of the things is that Assalamu alaikum. Did you pray Dhuhr? Oh, okay. Alhamdulillah. You got homework?
Not today, because holidays day school for the week.
Okay. Inshallah, if you want to go to the game room,
Okay.
yeah, you can go shoot some hoops in there, play some games.
All right.
Yeah. So I kind of seen it as, there's an old saying, if you starve a man, he'll eat what you feed him. And I felt like Allah was funneling me into this thing where it's like I didn't have a choice but to accept that, because everything else, it was just old, outdated, uninteresting, like just. And then here's this Quran, like this bright blue Quran with commentary in it, with a new language. And so I reluctantly stood in front of it for about 10 minutes just staring at it. And my library pass was getting ready to end. So I was just like, all right. So I got the book, I got the Quran, I checked it out, and I took it back to my cell. And yeah. But, and also I had a couple dreams, which I'll tell you about in the next video. Assalamu alaikum.